We often go into personal growth with the desire to become better. That desire makes us want to be perfect. Rather than trying to fix your dragons, you have to learn to live with them. The dragons are your essence that make you what you are. I'm not talking about such easy to accept flaws, easy to love flaws. I'm talking about the dragons which make you feel ashamed. Oh, I'm a perfectionist. That's my biggest flaw. No, your biggest flaw is the thing that makes you cringe, that makes you small, which is not easy to share in public. That's your biggest flaw. Can you embrace that one? The one thing you could start asking yourself if you want to start unpacking this is,
there goes a sight from my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution, and we're back with Christina Mandalakiani. Christina, welcome back.
thank you for having me back. And you know, it's not my first time, and still I get a little jolt of energy when I hear you saying your hello. I won't even attempt to call it anything.
Well, the you is totally, I guess, a me thing, and I think especially from someone that that espouses that our greatest potential comes from self-acceptance. I think it's it's very fitting, especially in our conversations, to have that in the beginning. I'll be honest with you. I remember the most awkward you I've had was the Marissa Peer one. Just because she's so well put together. She's, from a different generation to myself. And I was like, am I really going to you in this podcast? And nonetheless, we still started with a you.
I think it's important, actually. You know, how many times do we have this question? Am I going to tone myself down for someone? And I know I've had this question in my life many times, and it's so tempting to just be more appropriate for that particular circumstances. But it's an interesting fine balance, because there is space where you have to adjust, and then there are situations where you have to stay you.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because the book that you're writing coming out in the new year is called is about being flawsome, which I love this concept of flawsome, because you're awesome in your uniqueness. But then there's that balance that you're describing, right? Like in some instances, it's you've got to go along to get along a little bit, right? And in some instances, it's just be unapologetically yourself and just sort of see. And if any of the opportunities that weren't meant for you, that don't come to you, weren't meant for you anyway, right? So can you describe that balance a little bit more, like maybe espousing through your story, like potentially giving us two examples, one where you've gone along to get along, like places where you find it's probably more appropriate to sort of adopt to the social norm, adapt to the status quo, and in some instances where it's like, actually that really doesn't serve you.
I actually, the thing that came to my mind is that one of the signs of people who are psychopaths is that they completely disregard social convention.
Oh no!
You
heard it here
it doesn't
first.
mean that they, that they do it in your face, because they're also very charming people, and very often are manipulative. And by manipulative, that means that they can show a different side of them, not what is not actually them. But that I'm saying that with a little bit of a joke, of course.
Yes, a little bit of
most people are not.
You might be tuning into the podcast of a psychopath.
Well, most of us are not. Most of us are not. But with that said, I always like civility. And being nice and being polite, although actually being polite is all about lying, is all about not being yourself, because what is a polite answer to, did you like this cake? For example, if you don't like the cake, or would you like to have a cake and say you are trying to steer away from sugar? And that's actually, by the way, an interesting question, because we live in the society that applauds people who will say, oh, I don't eat this.
Yeah.
I actually have my reservations, because sometimes it's okay to say yes and just mess up your plate and pretend that you've eaten. but but that aside, in my book, I don't actually ask that question.
Mm.
And to be honest, I haven't been giving a lot of thought to that dilemma of adjusting to the social environment versus sticking true to yourself. But I know that when I talk about being true to yourself, I do get that question. I do get that question from people saying, like, so does that mean that I have to be myself no matter what, even if it's not fitting, or if it hurts people around? It's not as simple as that. You have to stick to your values, for sure, and you have to be true to your values. But does it mean that you have to be rude? That you have to be unpleasant? No, I don't think so. You can stick to your values. You can still be nice with people, and then decide to exclude yourself from the environment, from the circumstances, from the people who actually make you maybe not be completely true to yourself. So, for example, you might not very openly deny a piece of cake that you don't eat. You may accept it and even pretend that you've eaten it, and in a way you can say lie just to be nice. But then in the future, avoid the situations where you are even offered that sugary piece of cake. It's a very interesting thing, because a lot of people will say, like, no, you have to declare your truth. But why I'm giving that answer is because I don't believe in absolutes. I don't know who knows the truth. My truth may not be the absolute truth. Your truth might not be truth to me. So who am I to go out and profess the truth? Do I have that moral right? Some years ago, people were blaming eggs and fat for all sorts of things. Nowadays, we blame other things. So what was truth 20 years ago might not be truth today. So having realized that there is no absolute truth, that things change, that our understandings change, that our values change, I don't want to walk around the world wielding my truth, because it's a sharp weapon. Truth is to be used with caution. So I normally choose civility and being polite, normally. And if it is against my values, then I will just not place myself in the situation where I'm again conflicted with that. With that said, if it's a question of moral or ethics, I will speak out. I would say that this is against my values. I can't agree. For example, you ask me, do I have to sometimes adjust? I'm a feminist, and having come back to Estonia, which used to be part of Soviet Union, the relationship with feminism is kind of complicated here. Of course, it was 30 years ago, people have changed, but feminism is like a red cloth in this part of the world. People actually despise feminism. And I've heard people being misogynist, and I would speak out, because this is bigger than just a question of civility. This is bigger than just my personal beliefs. I think this is a bigger cause. I will not look for a fight, but if people are very offensive, I will speak out.
Yeah. And so even in the way you were describing that, because I was thinking through the question itself for my response as you were giving yours. And I think if someone was to ask me that question, I think there are micro interactions that we have as part of a society that are, I want to find a better way of describing this, but lubricative towards social interactions is how I'm going to put that. And I think in that place, politeness plays a role. Like, I don't want to meet a complete stranger and tell them, like, I don't like your hair, to which they could probably respond, Amrit, you don't even have any hair. But nonetheless, like there's that politeness that sort of keeps social civility and norms going. But for me, I was feeling into that the places most requiring of me to actually accept myself and there's some real safe places, like, this conversation here where I'm sitting with someone that, obviously is open-hearted, open-minded, and there is permission for me to be vulnerable and express myself fully. And also, and which is, I guess, that highlights probably some level of intimacy, probably in the intimater moments when I'm sitting with friends and having conversations. There's probably that permission to sort of, find the even more vulnerable part of myself, to sort of see what I can like open up to. And then also, I think some of the more, and again, probably that comes back to intimacy again, the bigger decisions that I have to make in life. I think oftentimes I find, especially as a coach, people make a lot of decisions based on social norms, which is, there's that opportunity to get really accept your situation where you are. And oftentimes I find when we're making decisions that aren't aligned with our soul's calling, it's because we can't really accept, that we're here to, and oftentimes an individual's perception is like, I'm here to just do this, and it's like, I'm here to just paint, or I'm here to just make music. And it's like, just because society doesn't value the arts as much as they value science and engineering, doesn't make it a just. It's equally as important, if not more. And we've discussed this in previous podcasts as well, right? So does that sort of speak to potentially how you apply it in your life a little bit, like in the intimate and the larger decision making moments, is potentially where there's more room for us to accept sort of our shortcomings?
It's you actually started a new train of thought, and I think we've talked so many times that I'm afraid that this conversation is going to go deeper and more philosophical than previously, because we already have the common ground to start with, right? So as you were speaking, I was thinking that there's a difference between big decisions, because the big decisions are never about civility. Big decisions, if you're making a choice in your life, it is not about other people, it is about you. Even if you think that that choice might be about other people, for example, a choice to divorce a husband with whom you have children, right? It is still about me, it's not about other people, no matter what other people might think. Civility is something different. It's interaction. It's interaction. It's maybe superficial, but it has such profound influence on us. And we have moved past the time of the times when people were civil to each other. And yes, of course, that also meant wearing masks, but you can be polite to other people without having to lie profoundly. You can be polite to other people and still express yourself. And these are very different things. Civility is just interaction. I've never given much thought to civility because it's just not my area of study, but I appreciate it very much. And I really like people who are civil. I really dislike when people are wielding that, I'm just being me, I'm just doing me, left and right, because very often we escape into how to say, by being unapologetically myself in small matters, by saying things about myself that maybe other people don't even care, how I meditate, how I eat, how I exercise, to just throwing it around left and right for whatever reason, just to be in your face, just to be myself. Very often by doing that, we have a feeling that I'm so true to myself that in the questions which are truly important, we get a permission to escape and not to stay true to ourselves. I feel that this happens, and it's important to not misplace that ability to be true to yourself, and to be true to yourself in the places where it matters, and to be okay with occasionally closing your eyes on that in the places where it isn't that important. In a more familiar expression, you have to choose your battles. Where is it really that important that you explain to a stranger how superior you are to everybody else because of whatever you do in your life, versus deciding that playing music is not just, that's the meaning of your life, and that's actually the world to you, the universe to you.
So to lighten it up a little bit, what prompted you to write what prompted you to write write about this concept of Flawsome?
Oh God, I wish I knew. Well, to give you a longer answer, because I love giving long answers. It's interesting. Our conversation started with a very, very different topic, and it was an interesting topic. I think it's an interesting exercise for brain early in the morning, because it's early in the morning. I'm still having my morning coffee, but to give you a longer story of my book, I've been in personal growth and transformation for 20 years now, and Mindvalley has published a lot of authors, amazing authors, and I've shared stage with some of the best speakers in the world, some of the best authors. So obviously, a lot of my good friends and mentors have told me, you have to write a book. I've heard that phrase for years, and I am a writer. I've embraced being a writer about a year ago. I like to write short form, so I write Instagram. It's 2,100 symbols with spaces. I love this short format. It makes you very sharp, which you wouldn't guess when you hear me talk. Because I talk a lot, but I like to write sharp and short form. So I've been writing quite a lot. And of course, on Instagram, people also told me you have to write a book. So as a business owner and an entrepreneur, I knew that I have to write a book eventually, but it was this this interesting thought that was there, but I just didn't gel with it. Being a perfectionist, I could sit down and write it, most likely, but I just felt it was forced. And when it comes to creativity, I don't like forced. I don't mind forced in other areas of life, but creativity, in my opinion, it's a different kind of relationship. It's not a forced relationship. It's about love. It's about being in the flow. It's about just trusting the process. And then my best ideas happen to me in the shower. I don't know where they happen to you. But in the shower, you are safe and you're with yourself and you're safe to be yourself. One day I just came out of the shower and I was ready, and I sat down and I started writing. And I didn't write because I had to, because it was my business model, because I had shared stage with the best authors and speakers, because my audience had asked me. I wrote because it was like delivering a baby. Once you are pregnant, you won't be able to cross your legs and not deliver. It comes. So I was ready to deliver the book, and that's how it happened. So why? I can't tell you. The baby was conceived and it was ready.
Well, even just in your description there, like you mentioned that there was a resistance in the time frame that you were being there's this idea of perfectionism, and it's kind of, well, I don't want to say ironic, but it's somewhat ironic to hear you say that when you're mentioning like the perfectionism is what was holding you from writing the book, and the book is all about being flawsome, and at the risk of just being surface deep analysis of the book, but that sort of juxtaposition between perfectionism and accepting our flaws, because I found again and again on the Inspired Evolution podcast, it's our biggest challenges that are our biggest gifts. And I think this is kind of what the theme potentially of the book may be as well, right?
For sure, yes. Perfectionism is an interesting quality that I have. I used to say I'm a recovering perfectionist until I finally realized that you can't recover from being yourself. It doesn't work like that. So I just embraced that quality, and it is we like to throw perfectionism as our big flaw, knowing that there is something nice about it. How can you, there's a different, I can throw a different flaw at you. I'm a lazy person. I like to stay in bed. I like to work from bed, to have my coffee in bed, my computer in bed. And okay, I've replaced lazy with leisurely, but the essence is the same. This is not as glamorous a fault as perfectionism, isn't it?
No.
And we like to be good. We like to be liked. So even when we talk about our flaws, about our imperfections, we like to choose the ones which are more pleasant, which are more glamorous. So yeah, I do mention perfectionism because it has influenced my life, and it still does. But I'm not talking about such easy to accept flaws, easy to love flaws. I'm talking about the dragons which make you feel ashamed.
Mm.
Perfectionism maybe makes you feel annoyed. Oh, here I am again. Here I'm procrastinating. Here I can't finish because I'm being perfectionist. But these are not the unpleasant feelings we dislike to face. The unpleasant feeling that you dislike to face, maybe not you, I do not know, but I mean,
please continue.
I'm talking generally, is shame, is feeling that you are not good enough, that there is someone better than you, that you will never be as good as is required for something. And perfectionism is not that flaw. Others are. Maybe your obstinance might be one of those flaws. I'm trying to dissect my flaws, but the things that make me feel ashamed is that I can never be the kind of speaker that I've seen on stage. I've learned public speaking from the best people, the best teachers in the world. 3 of them I know are the top of the top. And I've learned personally, have gotten like private lessons. And I know what it means to be a good public speaker by everybody's standard. I get it, but I have this annoying obstinacy, which makes me go on stage and say, I'm not going to be a monkey. I'm not going to be a clone. I'll be myself. And I know that people will come and tell me, but you have to do like that. And I'm like, no. And on the other hand, yeah, I know it is my obstinacy, but I also understand that it makes me also shrink, because I know that there will be people who are like, she's making this mistake. I know I'm making it knowingly. Why? Because I refuse to not be myself on stage. In other instances, I'm okay to not be myself. It's interesting, but on stage, because this is my mission, this is bigger than just being polite. There, I refuse to not be myself, even if whatever I will be a monkey to lift the energy, because when I'm on stage, my goal is to convey a message. And if the audience is not ready, I'm willing to not be myself and to do things which are unpleasant to me, to lift the energy so that they hear what I have to say. That's when I will be the monkey. But I prefer someone else doing that, because I want people to know me as I am and not to see me perform, which is such a bizarre thing. And this is what,
and it's very nuanced. It's very nuanced. It's very, very nuanced. Sorry, I'm interrupting, please. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're not interrupting. You're helping me to move along with my thought. So it's a very curious thing. So in my book, when I talk about your flaws, I'm not talking, I like to call flaws dragons. It's just the analogy. I think we operate better when we see pictures. Most of us are more visual than anything else. So I like to give beautiful analogies, beautiful pictures, and I call them dragons because the whole story relates to a story of Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins, because I compare Path Back to You as that story. Bilbo goes on this journey, and while the whole journey he thinks of his comfortable armchair and his tea and his hobbit hole, and he longs to get back, but he's still on this journey. He can't turn back. So the same with finding your path back to you. Once you're out the door, even if you think that you can turn back, you have to go through this whole journey. You have to go through the forest. You have to go into this horrible cave and face that dragon and get out on the other side. And then you'll get the permission to go back home. And even with that permission to go back home, when you get back home, you're not the same old hobbit anymore. And if you know that analogy, he actually abandoned his life. So that's my analogy. That's why I call your flaws dragons. But dragons are not the things that you wear on yourself like a badge of honor. Oh, I'm a perfectionist. That's my biggest flaw. No, your biggest flaw is the thing that makes you cringe, that makes you small, that makes you feel small, and that makes you actually, which is not easy to share in public. That's your biggest flaw. Can you embrace that, man? Can you find strength in that flaw? That's the question.
And I guess the question from there is, how do we start to accept these parts of ourselves? What has been the process that supported you in coming more closer to greater and greater levels of acceptance of the dragon? Or is it a matter of shedding the dragon? What is the process? What do you do with the dragon? How do I slay this beast?
Well, Bilbo released. Well, he didn't. He was trying to talk to the dragon. It didn't work. But that analogy goes as far as it goes.
So don't talk, or you can talk to the dragon for a little while.
Yeah, it
Don't
doesn't
be
go any
fooled.
further, unfortunately. Well, in my story, you have to live with your dragon. And that's the thing. We often go into personal growth with the desire to become better. And that desire makes us want to be perfect. That's why so many of us have the perfectionism as our biggest flaw. So we have this picture of perfection in our head, and we aspire to that picture of perfection. And that makes us try to heal the things, not heal actually. Heal is a good word. Try to change, to correct, to repair those things that are not working for us. So we take our biggest flaw and we try to fix them. But I think people don't need fixing, because fixing implies being broken. And if you try to fix yourself, you start with the assumption that you're broken, that something is wrong with you. I think dragons are there, and rather than trying to fix your dragons, rather than trying to slay your dragons, I think you have to learn to live with them. Because the dragons are your essence that make you what you are. And you can't fix yourself into being something else. You can't change. You know, you are what you are. Can you live with that? Yes, I'm a leisurely person. I'm not going to try to change it. That's my nature, but I can work with it. I can create systems to help me move when I don't feel like that. But I also harness that, like my leisurely personality makes me optimize, makes me find ways which work better for me. My leisurely personality makes me always prioritize what I love the most above everything else. My family, time with my kids, things that I because I'm leisurely, I seek out activities which make me love what I do. Because I will not force myself for anything less than really important. So I harness that side of me, and I try to work with it, to live with it, rather than try to force it out of my system, because you can't force yourself. You can't force your nature out of your system. You can only learn to work with it, learn to live with that. And the interesting thing, because you see, when as I said, I've been in personal growth for 20 years, and I have been a perfectionist all my life. And I have been a straight A student when I was in school. So I know what it means to work hard. So we live in a society that idealizes hard work and force yourself into success. We work, like, even in personal growth, when people come, how do they try to become a better person? They try to switch on their iron will and force themselves into something different. Something unnatural, something which is not them, and they rely on willpower, and willpower is an inexhaustible resource. So you put your willpower in the things that you think matter, but it is an inexhaustible resource. And not only that, there's multiple research that shows that if you exhaust your resource of willpower in one area, you will not have enough of it in another area. Just a very simple example, there was this research where people were asked to make to solve complicated mathematical tasks. So solving complicated mathematical challenges requires willpower. Well, I mean, you do something which is hard, and scientists were measuring how long are you capable of doing that before you give up. That shows how much willpower you have. So that's how they were measuring willpower in scientific terms. So they split the group in two, and both groups had to wait for about half an hour before they were allowed to go into the classroom where they were measured. Actually, their willpower was measured. And one group was just waiting in the waiting room. Sorry, both groups had a bowl of biscuits, chocolate chip cookies. And one group was just waiting in that waiting room with the chocolate chip cookies. They were given no instructions whatsoever. So if they wanted to eat chocolate chip cookies, they ate them. If they didn't eat them. The other group was instructed to, for sure, not take a chocolate chip cookie. So the thought was planted into their head. And of course, they had to, while they were waiting for their mental challenge, they had to also resist eating a chocolate chip cookie, because most people actually find them very tasty. Those aside who didn't find them tempting, everybody else was actually struggling to not eat chocolate chip cookies. They were wasting their willpower. So the moment when they were allowed to go into the classroom to do their mental task, the people who had to resist the chocolate chip cookies spent half the time on solving the challenging mathematical problems. They had half the willpower of the other group, who was not given any instructions and who could eat chocolate chip cookies if they wanted, or not eat them if they didn't want them. And that experiment was actually replicated and repeated, and it shows exactly the same result. If you spend your willpower in one area, you will not have enough of it for another area which may be challenging. So very often when we try to instill a new habit, for example, a habit of going to gym, it is so important to us because we think it's going to change our whole life. We put so much willpower into that we'll start lacking willpower in other areas. And for example, we'll start suddenly being snappish with people in our office because we've spent so much willpower on installing the new habit. Suddenly we don't have willpower to do something else. And I choose to do my life on other fuel rather than willpower, on motivation, for example, on intrinsic motivation, where I enjoy doing what I do. I choose to reserve all my willpower for patience, for being polite, for being patient with my children, for being patient with my colleagues. That's the only place where I think willpower is useful. And in my mission, I prefer finding some other kind of fuel. But because I'm leisurely, I have to be extra careful with how I choose my activities in life.
Yeah, this reminds me very much of a very powerful book that I read a while ago by Dr. David Hawkins, of like the difference between power and force, and forcing ourselves versus the power of like that is innate and natural in existence for us to potentially harness. But I'm not sure even if that feels like force, even the word harness. So I'm conscious of using that. I'm probably being blaspheme in using that languaging. I think the leisure one makes sense. Like the lazy, I can sort of see how you have found ways to live with that dragon by finding ways of, okay, this has forced me to be further optimal. How do I optimize, right? I guess for the listener tuning in that doesn't have necessarily either the perfectionist, which we discussed wasn't really a demon, but like the leisurely, like let's start with something that's really pragmatic that some could, and I'm obviously speaking from a place of somewhat privilege here, but let's say we have some like body issues, right? Like body, the way we visualize our body, right? And that's our kind of big shame, that, you know, I'm not comfortable with how I feel in my body. How do we start to live with a dragon like that one?
Not my forte, and I absolutely relate to these people because after turning 40, I started noticing that the body is, you know, it's not an eternal machine, not an eternal vessel. And aging is a hard thing for women, particularly, not as hard for men, because of the social understanding of, you know, how men and women are valuable. So while men are valuable for their achievements very often, women are valuable for their achievements. But one more of my dragons is I like to be liked. And I mean physically liked. I like to be attractive, sexually attractive. And that's one more of the dragons which I've lived with all my life. That's why we put on makeup and we wear nice clothes. It's part of a lot of women's lives, and we suppress the dragon. We don't even talk about that. Being sexy, being attractive is not considered even professional. So how do you live with that dragon when you add to that the dragon of being afraid of aging, of realizing that time is merciless. It goes in one direction. And while I can say that, yes, I still live the same lifestyle as I lived in my 20s, I can still afford to do a lot of things. Yes, I'm in good physical shape, but I'm 10 kilos heavier than I was in my 20s. And my skin is not as pretty as it used to be when I was in my 20s. I mean, age happens no matter what you say about that. And you can look really good and you can be very energetic. It is changing you. If you don't accept that it is changing, you are being in denial. It's changing, if not even you, it changes your environment. People that I loved and that I remember as children are aging, are losing their ability to move around, to be the same energetic. That I've lost people in my life who I've loved. So time is real. This is one of my big dragons, and that's the dragon that has taught me to understand how painful it can be to accept your body the way it is. Because if I'm used to wearing anything I like, and now actually choosing clothes to hide certain parts which are not as they used to be, I get it. I get it. I do not know how to live with that. There are people who are better than me to explain that. But I know one thing. I've learned with my body, I've learned one lesson, what it means to love yourself unconditionally versus what it means to love yourself with the condition that you are going to improve and going to become better. Because you see, very often when we talk about body image, we say, yeah, I accept myself like that, but I do want to lose those extra kilos. And I do want to lose those, I do not know, probably we don't lose wrinkles anymore unless we do some more invasive procedures. But I mean, we love our body very often with conditions. I will love you if you exercise 3 times a week or 5 times a week. I will love you if you put only healthy food in yourself. And if you had that pizza, no. That's the reason to take my love back from you, from your body. That's the way we learn, we love our body. I noticed that. I was once looking at myself in the mirror and I was thinking, yes, I'm well on the path of becoming back in that shape that I think is my optimal shape. And then I love myself now, but then I will truly accept myself. And then I remembered, I thought about my child, and my child has Asperger's. And that makes relationship with him a little more nuanced, not challenging anymore.
Interesting.
Now I've learned. But it was a challenging way, because I remember times when I didn't know how to interact with him until I got the diagnosis, until I got the training, until I understood him. Now I think he's the best child in the world. So I thought myself, I look at my body and I tell myself, yes, I love you, but I will love you even more when you are in better shape. But would I ever tell my son, I love you, but I would love you so much infinitely more if you just didn't have Asperger's? I think Asperger's is what makes him so cool. I love him with it. Yes, it's not neurotypical. And for most people, it would be also a challenge. It was a challenging path. It has cost me nerves, money, time, everything. But I love him, not with it, but for it as well. Can I love my body not despite the extra folds that have appeared, not despite the extra wrinkles that have appeared, the gray hair that I find so irritating, but with it, and maybe even for it, because that shows time, like in that movie Cars, this main character told me that there's this main character who is a cool shiny sports car, and then there's this mater who is a tow truck, who is he has dents and scratches and whatnot, and this shiny car tells his friend Mater, why doesn't he just get fixed? It's so easy. And he says, no, but these things, they actually make me what I am. They remind me of the experiences of my life. My stomach, which has lost shape because its muscles have
Expanded and
moved
contracted.
aside, it's like this because I've had 2 children. Can I appreciate the fact that my body has birthed these 2 children, not hate it for losing shape because of that? And that's, I think the love for your body is one of the hardest things because of the society, the way the society gives pressure on to us, and especially women. Men are getting there as well. You guys are catching up with us. But do you know that statistics says that 80% of women, when they look in the mirror, don't like what they see.
Which is
How
why I asked
painful
this
it is.
question. Yeah, which is why I asked this question. And I want to sort of just ask a similar thing about this. What you've described is, you know, it's almost like I need a better way to language this, but I'm just going to speak it out and hopefully it comes out appropriate. So let's say I don't approve of my body, and then what I've heard from you is learning to love it. Like, and thank you so much for sharing the example of your son, because I think that is painfully obvious. There is no way my love would be conditional when it comes to your own child, right? It's just like, you're perfect, not despite of this, it's not because of this, you know, it's perfect. But then there's also in the personal development industry, especially, I hear this a lot. Yeah, it's like, but you wouldn't have fed yourself that much food if you loved your vessel, you know, or you wouldn't have treated yourself that way if you loved your vessel prior, you know. And I find that being the kind of rub in between the space, which I find it very difficult to reconcile myself. And I'm not asking you to, but yeah, and I find
no, I can talk about that because I get it. We live in the society of fat shaming, and we have gone crazy about what we call fat, by the way. So there is an objective problem. Yes, of course, there is an objective problem. There are a lot of people who are unhealthily overweight. I agree. This is part of I guess this is part of the price we pay for the luxury and comfort of living in the society that we have built for ourselves. It's a safe society with easy access to a lot of food, although most of the overweight people, I haven't researched that topic because, you know, body and health and nutrition are not my area. So I haven't researched enough, but as far as I know, most of the weight problems are actually attributed to that part of the society which is a little less rich, poorer, right? Because it is mostly the cheaper food that is unhealthy. That much I know, but that's very superficial. With that aside, you know, I will say something which will rub a lot of people the wrong way, but I guarantee that a lot of people who are in good shape do not love themselves just as much as those people who are overweight. Because love, there is I know, I agree, you have to take care of yourself. It is part of self-love, but it is not the self-love. Taking care of yourself is not about self-love. It is one of the expressions. It's like, you know, there are 5 languages of love. So it is one of the expressions, taking care of yourself. And if you don't take care of yourself, yes, that means that you don't truly love yourself. Yes. But if you take care of yourself, it doesn't mean that you love yourself yet. You see, there's causality, but it goes one way. Let's not make this logical mistake. Oh, I take care of myself so well. Look at my shape. I eat well, I exercise, I do all the right things. No, that doesn't mean you love yourself. That means that you have mastered, perfected the art of taking care of yourself. But if you ate pizza, what would you feel?
And what would you be saying to yourself internally, right? That internal dialogue, like, is that still
if
a
your
pleasant
child
dialogue?
breaks a vase, that's not the ideal behavior. Would you hate that child? Or would you find kindness and compassion and maybe understanding in your heart that this child just was naughty, just didn't listen to you? That's just a child. It's not a doll. Can you find the same compassion towards yourself? The problem of our contemporary society is that, yes, while there is an objective problem with overweight, with healthy weight gain in general, there is also a very huge problem with us substituting self-love with self-care. and running away into self-care from self-love, because it's so much easier to torture yourself with rigorous self-care rather than actually look inside and figure out, what are you running away from? What is your problem? Why are you so intent on everything else? Because you see, if we bring back the analogy of raising children, there is this proverbial child of very rich parents who has everything in life: good nannies, good house, good clothing, good school, everything. But parents are too busy making money. They don't have time to spend with the child.
Yeah.
It's a proverbial, it's an abstract picture. But we all know that that child can grow up into very privileged brat and very unhappy person who would end up being, partying hard, taking drugs, running away from one simple truth: the child didn't get love. Love is not about care. It's not about big house, not about good school. It's not about good nannies. It's about a parent, no matter what kind of parent, finding time, sitting down with your child, being present with your child, hearing your child, seeing your child, accepting the child, telling the child that no matter what you do, I love you. If you make a mistake, I love you. I'm always here for you. That's what love for a child is about. It's not about schools. It's not about clothes. And love towards yourself is not about yoga. It's not about eating healthy. It's not about meditation. It's about, can you sit down with yourself and say, I'm here with you. And no matter what you do, I'm always here with you. I will love you. Let's take it again from step zero and try it again.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was going to say, why is it such a hard sell when you're not selling anything? Because it's almost like, hey, there's nothing wrong. You're perfect. It's all good. Just relax a little, accept yourself. Things are good. And then I can sort of feel like 1,000,000+1 sort of buts drop in just on the other side of it, and I acknowledge that that's probably exactly where my work begins, because those are the dragons. But I find it quite telling that there are those buts, and I'm sure they exist for those that are tuning in as well. And usually the hard part is, that normally it's like, okay, and you find something that's like, okay, well then you can go unpack this via said course or said thing, or this is a whole framework or a whole process. Whereas here it's like, yeah, you've got dragons and pet them. And it's like, but you're not gonna give me the sword, you're not gonna give me, so like I think it's really profound, giving us the permission to just accept them and pet our dragons and learn to actually, the discomfort of just sitting with it and going, actually, that is that part of me, and can I really love that part of me unconditionally and just come to accept it? And I'm sure it's not something that happens overnight, and it's probably conversations like this that sort of poke and prod and open the door, and for us to sort of weave on that journey further, given time. I think it probably takes a lot of patience, and you mentioned the word patience earlier. Is that correct?
I, in my book, actually suggest 3 skills. Well, not skills, qualities. It's honesty, and we talk a lot about honesty. We started with honesty, right? Well, we started with truth. It requires honesty, it requires kindness, because honesty without kindness is mean. So they have to go hand in hand. And it requires courage. Definitely, it will require courage. So I talk about these 3 things. I give some very practical skills how to deal with unpleasant emotions, because unpleasant emotions are going to come up. Of course, there are going to be a lot of questions, but one of the questions people ask is, but how do I know what is the dragon and what is actually something that needs to be eradicated? Well, if you're smoking, most likely it's a bad habit. But it is not, it is not what makes you you. And there are nuances. And as I said, I don't believe in absolutes. So I can't give absolutes. I can't give the truth. What I can give you questions. Questions that you can ask yourself. Because whether you like it or not, but you have the answers in you. Sometimes we don't like the answers that we have in us. So we come up with stories because it's much easier to do things which are tangible. That's why we substitute self-love with self-care, because it's tangible. It's so much easier to deal with our physical body than with our emotional body. We are not taught. We don't know. That's why we go into things which we can understand, where we can put more effort, more time, more perfectionism, more willpower. It's like, if I say that the biggest art about life is letting go, the good girls, good boys, perfectionists will ask, how do you let go? I'm trying so hard.
Yeah, and then you're holding on to trying to control the concept of letting go. Yeah, I totally get what you're espousing there. Yeah.
So yeah, it requires patience, but it's the journey. As I said, once you're out of the door, you're good.
Christina, what are some of the questions you hope that people would ask themselves that brings them home to themselves? What is like an example of a really powerful question that you personally love and wished people ask themselves more?
Oh my God, it's such a hard question to answer short. But the thing that comes to my mind is probably, can I still love myself? I think it would be super important. Maybe it's a result of our conversation, but I think if you could, no matter what you feel, if you could just ask yourself, can I, but not as a yes or no question, but more like as a rhetorical question, like a request, can I please still love myself? Try to treat yourself like you are your most important person, your most beloved person, not superficially. It's interesting, when I talk about self-love from stage, I like to ask that question. When I talk about honesty or self-love, these are my two favorite questions. I ask, how much do you love yourself on the scale from 0 to 10? Or how honest are you with yourself? Are you honest with yourself? All the time, 70% of the people will give an answer somewhere between 7 and 10, or 80%. It's true. Yeah. But that's the nature of delusion. You're never aware that you're delusional. You're never aware that you lie to yourself. That's how our mind works. It's brilliant. It cheats you and you don't even realize it. So, and then when we start unpacking it, when we start deeper, then I don't ask people to say like, oh no, I've been lying to myself. No, just give yourself permission to accept the little, and I don't want to call it truth, but just the little suggestion that maybe you're wrong. And maybe there's nothing wrong about being wrong. It's okay. It's okay. Maybe you're wrong. And whatever happens in your life, I mean, it's a long journey, and we had a conversation which was a little bit here, a little bit there, mostly because we've had conversations before, and we started head on with something very, very philosophical, maybe not so practical. And if you want to go on this path, you need a practical journey. And of course, you have to take it step by step. In my course, in my book, I talk about, first, I give the skills of dealing with unpleasant emotions, because unpleasant emotions are going to surface. We're not even aware how much we feel them. We run away from them. We don't know how to deal with them. So we come up with all sorts of ways how not to deal with them. So I give skills, and then we talk about honesty, then we talk about kindness, we talk about courage. So it's a journey, it's a path. Here we're talking about everything. So the one thing that I think you could ask yourself, you could start asking yourself, if you want to start unpacking this, is, how can I love myself? Even through all of this, how can I love myself in my perfectionism and obsession with self-care?
Yeah. The one that's really present for me as well is how to be with unpleasant emotions. I was recently reading something and they said, and this is just an article, so it's probably not super vetted, but they said they did a body research for this particular person, not scientific research. And what she found was that when she went around researching, and I think this was in the States, she found that people could only feel a certain amount of like three emotions, which was they had, I think it was happiness, um, and they had grief, and they had sadness in their arsenal of emotions. So those were the three things. Oh no, sorry, it was anger. No, sorry, yeah, it was
Yeah.
anger, sadness, and joy slash happiness. One of those three. I'm butchering it now, but those were sort of the three. And she subsequently went on this journey of like understanding that if we don't, like, questioning, her question was, if we don't have labels for the emotions, can we even feel the
Mm.
emotion if we don't have labels for them? Which I found to be quite interesting to sort of just think about that as a concept. Um, yeah, how do
Can I
you
give a
invite?
remark to that? I
Mm,
think we still feel them.
mm.
We just can't process
Identify
them.
them.
We can't. Most of psychological literature, when they talk about emotions, what they say is that emotions carry information.
Mm,
So you still feel emotions. We are very unaware of our emotions because every single moment of time you feel something, some emotion. You either don't have a name for that, or you're
mm,
not aware that emotions come in different degrees,
mhm,
from very subtle feelings to intense. So we normally notice emotions when they're intense, when they start naming them. That's why joy, anger, and sadness, grief is actually a subset of sadness.
yeah.
Uh, we notice them when they're intense, but there are less intense emotions. For example, apathy,
Mm,
dullness. You normally don't mention them because they're a little bit less intense. But if you go a little bit deeper into that field, then apathy, for example, apathy and dullness can be signs of depression, which can actually spiral down to very dangerous conditions. So
mm,
it is very healthy to be a little bit more aware of your emotions. So in psychological literature, what they say is that emotions carry information,
mm,
which is vital information for you to deal with your life. So if you don't have labels for your emotions, you're probably not registering them, probably you're not hearing the information. So you do still feel them, but you don't know how to process them. You don't know how to deal with them. You don't know what they are, what information they carry, and how can you move on through these emotions with benefit to yourself. That's I feel what is the biggest problem with being unaware of your emotions. But
yeah.
it's true, we have very limited uh, capacity of the emotions that we operate with. We call out stress, we call out anger, sadness. Yes, most people it's not three,
Mm,
but it is a handful.
mhm,
But
mhm,
if you dig deep, I once tried to create my own vocabulary of expanded vocabulary of emotions.
mm.
I got lost at 300.
Wow.
There are nuances. Anger is not just anger. There's irritation, there's rage, there's, there are so many. Like if I open my spreadsheet, I'll give you like 30 names for anger.
Mm,
There are all sorts of different nuances because irritation and annoyance, which are variations of anger, are a little different
mm,
versus anger per se, or let's say when you are furious, right?
mm,
They're very different nuances, different. And if you name your anger, if you give it a more precise name, it carries more information. You know how to deal with it better. Because
mhm,
annoyance, you may eject yourself out of the situation. When it is actually something deeper, you might have to express yourself and be you. We're coming back in a full circle to our conversation. When do you choose that you have to be you, that you have to proclaim your values, that you have to draw the boundary and say, this is important and non-negotiable, versus where you can choose to just be polite and you eject yourself out of the situation? You have to
mm,
be aware of what kind of emotion that situation elicits in you. What is that battle worth fighting?
mm. And if we decide that it is worth fighting for certain emotions and certain battles, how do you prescribe we sit with some of the more unpleasant emotions like anger and potentially sadness? Like, is it a matter of being present to it over time, or different emotions, different treatments? What are your
Well, I don't treat usually emotional
Yeah, I know. Even treat
situations.
emotions is like, sorry,
I have to
I've
make a
walked into
little
a landmine.
disclaimer.
Walked into a
No, no, it's fine. It's
landmine.
fine. It actually gives me an opportunity to make a disclaimer. I'm not. I don't have a degree in psychology. I'm the biggest amateur fan of psychology, so I refer to it a lot. But I don't work with people. I'm not a therapist. So I do have my own formula for dealing with unpleasant emotions, nevertheless, and it has 7 steps. I might butcher the order right now. So the first one is actually being aware that what we are talking about, being aware that you're feeling emotions all the time. If you were to stop right now and ask yourself, what emotion do you feel? Can you give it a name? Of course, I do hope that I'll give you a suggestion. I hope it's curiosity or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But any other moment, like when you're just walking through the park, stop and ask yourself, what is this emotion? Then the next one is actually acknowledging that you are feeling an emotion. And that is a little more relevant when they are intense. For example, when you're feeling an intense emotion that you think is not part of your picture, that you shouldn't be feeling, because part of having a picture of what it means to be perfect you comes with what are the emotions that the perfect me is supposed to feel. So a very simple example, an enlightened, loving version of me isn't supposed to feel disliked towards another person. I'm all love. So if you're feeling something akin to dislike or akin to jealousy or greed, a more enlightened version of you wouldn't feel greed or jealousy, right? You'll start, you're like, no, this is not what I'm supposed to feel. And what does our mind do? We actually start replacing the reality. We start lying to ourselves. When the reality and our picture of perfection don't correspond, we start bridging the gap with lies. And our mind is perfect. It's built for creating an illusion, for distorting the reality. If you're interested in that, research defense mechanisms in psychology. Oh my God, this is such a beautiful topic. So, because we face emotions that we don't accept as part of our picture, we don't acknowledge them. We start either substituting them, which is reaction formation, or projecting them. Oh no, I don't dislike you. You're the one who dislikes me, and I'm just reacting to that.
Yeah, that turns into gaslighting real fast, doesn't it? Yeah.
or reaction formation. I don't dislike you. I'm concerned. I'm all love. For God's sake. Actually, distorting your feelings is as damaging to you as it is to another person. Just acknowledge that you're angry with me.
Yeah.
Because that's much healthier, because that gives us permission to move on. Because when you say like, no, I'm all love, it's all you're being, it's so, I don't even want to go into that topic. So the second step is acknowledging.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for most of us. Then if you can name it, and that's what we were talking about. There are so many names to emotions. The more precisely you name it, the better you can deal with that. The more precise the information that you are getting. And there are at least 200 functional names that you can work with. Just research expanded vocabulary of emotions on internet, and you'll get loads of material to work with.
Right.
So name your emotions as precisely as you can. Then the next one, locate it in your body, because all emotions are expressed somewhere in your body, because that's where you can work with that. If you locate it in your body, every emotion expresses itself somewhere physically, whether it's in your chest, in your stomach, in your limbs, in your head. It can be any kind of sensation, heaviness, tension, pain. Then the next one, and again, you can
whichever order.
You can shift the order if it's more natural to you, because very often locating in the body comes before you even are aware of emotion. You might locate something in your body first, like I'm feeling very weird in my stomach, and then you become aware that you're feeling an emotion. So that step can move. And then you ask yourself, because that's tied to giving precise name to your emotion, what information is this emotion carrying? I call it diagnose. Whatever it is, you feel jealous. What does it mean? Don't judge. Go into it with curiosity. Don't judge. Oh, no, I can't feel jealous. No, I have to work with it. I have to shove it away. That's not how it works. You ask yourself, why am I feeling that? No matter what it is, don't be judgmental. You feel what you feel. Can you still love yourself like a child? If your child came and said, I'm angry, I know we are tempted to say, no, you can't be angry. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Why are you angry? What makes you angry? Don't deny a child an opportunity to feel what they feel. Don't teach them to be a zombie. Learn, teach them to dive deep and explore and learn and carry the information, because that's the beauty about emotions. The moment they do their job, they move on. If you start describing what you feel, as you describe, you start feeling something new. Try to go into it with curiosity rather than the judgment. Yes, so you feel jealous. You're human. If it was your child, would you still love yourself? What does it say? What kind of values does it point? Maybe if you feel jealous, that means that you haven't done work in a certain area of your life. Maybe that's a call to action. You know, maybe if you feel jealous, that just highlights some quality about you. Ask, be curious, ask, and let it just be. Of course, you can't get stuck because there are no absolutes. You have to be able to move on from that diagnosis. So the next step, and what helps you to move on, if it's an intense emotion, it usually expresses itself very intensely in your body, and that's a good place to practice. You relax physically. You tell that body, a part of your body, you can go into meditation here, close your eyes and tell that part of your body to relax. Breathe. There is this beautiful box breathing, which actually gives you balance. It's like you breathe in at the count of 4, you hold your breath to a count of 4, you breathe out to a count of 4, and you hold your breath. 4, 4, 4, 4. It really helps you to find balance. It actually relaxes your body fully. The moment you relax yourself physically, your emotion also subsides, because they are it's so interesting. Emotions are expressing themselves in your body, but also through your body, you can let them go. That's why you feel so much better in the morning after you have slept, because your body relaxes. And then after that, I usually suggest to embrace your dragon. Because you've worked through it, right? It's given your information. And if you feel you've relaxed physically, now you're ready to release. And that's the hardest part. You let go. You're like, okay, that's it. Can I move on? What do I do with my life next? What's the next best step? You don't fight it. You don't terminate it. You don't hide it. You don't pretend that it's not there. You just accept, you listen, you chill, you let go, and you move on with your life. And it's just, that's what you are. Your emotions is not you. Your emotions, you just feel them. So it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel jealous. It's okay to feel righteous. It's okay to feel perfect. It's okay to feel better than everybody else. Listen to the information and know that you may be wrong. And it's okay.
And just as you're sharing that our emotions are not us, I get the impression that our dragons are a part of us, but our dragons aren't us, even though we may identify ourselves as our dragons.
But they're more complex than the emotions, right?
Of course.
Because my dragon, my laziness, can create all sorts of emotions for me. On one side, it creates the shame and guilt.
Mm.
And I'm using very, very general terms right now. Actually, if I went deeper, probably I could come up with more nuanced feelings like discontent, or maybe even disliking myself a little bit. I wish I was a little more hardworking, but on the other hand, I know that because of that, I'm researching that field a lot, because I think that we live in a society which idealizes hard work too much.
Oh yeah,
And
big time.
I know, and this is such a rat race. This is such a hamster's wheel. It makes people unhappy, because
Yeah.
what are your happiest moments is when you hug the most beloved person and you do nothing and you're being a lazy bum. And yesterday I woke up in the morning in my countryside home, which I built last year,
Yeah.
with the money that I earned with hard work. But it wasn't about hard work and the money that I earned. It was about me taking my cup of coffee, which some people would argue is not healthy for me, sitting on the steps of the freshly built house, looking into the forest with my mom next to me with her cup of coffee, and thinking of the sheep that I'm going to buy. This is the moment which makes me happy, and I'm lazy in that moment. So maybe being leisurely is not so bad and not so unimportant, because that makes me actually research and find out that the Pareto principle is there for a reason. If you analyze what you create, yes, I have periods of hard work. Today I had to wake up early to rush to get ready, because I was taking my kid to school, and the usual morning thing, and rushing to be in time. I was actually 5 minutes late for this podcast. So I get it. You sometimes have to be in a hamster's wheel, but that can't be your default regime, because if you analyze your work, you will discover that the 80% of the things that matter you create in that stroke of genius, where you don't even work. That's when you flow. That's how you see. At 36, I decided to learn harp. And in harp, there is this technique. I don't remember the actual name for it, but you play a succession of arpeggios, and harp has 47 strings. You do it like this. And you have to touch the strings one by one very quickly.
Yeah.
So to learn this technique, you practice for hours and hours and hours. But for it to sound, you have to let go and trust your body to know what's it doing.
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing. The stroke of genius happens when you let go. And that's the one thing we never manage to, because it's so inexplicable. Yeah. It's so much easier to put hard work. It's so much easier to work your tail off, to put the hours, because that's something which we understand. That's tangible, but that's not what creates genius. And that's maybe my laziness was given to me so that I research it deeper. And actually, maybe I'm paying with something. I do not know. I live a very comfortable life. I've built a lot. I do not know. Maybe I could have created 5 times as much. I do not know. But maybe I was given that as one of the messages that I have for the world. Who knows? I will discover it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, as you were sharing, I could feel the dragons, and this is just where my kooky little head went, where these are like little drags, like we feel like they drag on, like drag on our character, these little dragons that we have. But yeah, I think, articulating that, there is so much in them that, once we accept them, that is just, it can be a blessing in many ways, just to sort of come home to ourselves and just realize that maybe this is the whole reason why, I carry that dragon, is for me to just learn to look at that way, and learn to be even more accepting of myself ultimately. It's probably speaking to us in a certain way.
You know how I figured out how to deal with laziness? I make appointments with people.
Well, that's and
I show up. And when I show up, I work.
I found that as a hack, as a coach as well, because I coach different people with, this is really basic, but like some people are task oriented and some people are people oriented, and I'm 100% people oriented, very little task orientation within me. And I've learned to hack myself to care about the people that are doing the tasks, So I'll either book appointments with people to make sure that I get the task done, or to get invested in other people's tasks and care about what they are doing, and then, leverage the person into the task. So leveraging human connection to sort of get tasks done is a very powerful skill there. Christina,
You know what?
yeah, go on.
Can I just add one more thing?
Oh,
You know
I'd be
what's
rude not
important
to.
about accepting your leisurely part? If you don't accept it, a lot of people can relate to procrastination.
Yeah.
And nowadays we have linked it to perfectionism. So it's so good, oh, I'm just being perfect. There are other reasons for procrastination. In my case, it's not so much perfectionism, it's more the leisureliness. But the thing is that a lot of people have this. And I know a lot of very accomplished people have this. We just don't talk about that because it's such taboo.
Yeah.
But if you accept that, you actually, the moments when you are indulging in that, you can truly enjoy it rather than feeling guilty for indulging in that moment. And that's what we lose. We still give ourselves those moments because our bodies are not, I'll come back to the phone. It won't, if you don't charge it, it won't function. No matter how good it is, it will die. So our bodies do that to us. They'll push us into being, into being leisurely from time to time. But because we don't accept that side of ourselves, when we are doing this because we have to, we feel guilty. So rather than fully recharging and enjoying and savoring it, we can't wait to get back to work.
Yeah.
Isn't that torture?
Even your nervous system, right? Like dropping into that parasympathetic to allow yourself to really sink into it, rather than just like, okay, now I'm doing the thing that should relax me, but I'm feeling guilty about it. So I'm still saying jacked into my sympathetic nervous system is, yeah.
Can you, I do not know if you felt that, like you sit down to meditate and then at some point it's like, when is it over? I have to go.
I try not to have a hard stop on the end of my meditation. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes it's, okay, I'm squeezing it in and it's like, okay, 5 minutes. And it's like, is it 5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes.
Maybe my alarm clock stopped and I'm sitting here for 3 hours.
Yeah. It's a journey. Christina, I thank you so much for sharing how to actually really sit with the unpleasant emotions and just giving us permission to sort of, just learning the nuance between really what kindness looks like towards ourselves, because I know that in each moment it can be different in each moment. In some moments, kindness is not to eat the chocolate bar. And in some moments, kindness is completely to have the chocolate bar and enjoy it and don't build a story around it, please, And I think there's a real nuance in there that we've walked ourselves into today that I really appreciate you helping us unpack. And I will put a link to, joining the waitlist to Becoming Flawsome into the show notes below. I'm excited for this book to come out because, every time we talk, I feel like I just come home closer and closer to just being more at ease with myself. And I think that's really the medicine that you're carrying. And I really appreciate you sharing so abundantly in that space as well. Not just obviously today's conversation, but all the conversations that inform this one. And not just the 3 conversations we've had previously. It's, your walk in life. You really provide a lot of context to the content that you're sharing. And I really respect and appreciate you for that. Thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Thank you. Can I just finish with a butchered quote from Matrix? I'm rephrasing it. Kindness is not about a chocolate bar. Sorry. I was referring to there's no spoon.
There is no spoon. But thank you so much for doing this with us, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me again.
No worries. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to its end. Obviously, you absolutely love this podcast, and I want to thank you so much for watching this all the way through. Here is another video that's perfectly curated just for you to watch as the next best video to keep your inspiration flowing, to keep you evolving, to keep you going. Check it out.